Welcome back, McFly subscribers. Today we're going to be tying something called the Carter's Rubber Leg Dragonfly. Yeah, it's kind of a mouthful there, but it's a really awesome fly that I think is great to have with you when fishing panfish. Now I will discuss this fly later in the video as I'm sure you want to get started tying right away, but in case you haven't seen this channel before, this is McFly Angler.
Starts now.
Okay, let's start tying. Place the hook securely in your vise. For a hook, I'm using Risen's barbless jig 90-30 in size 12. Now this is a long shank jig hook, and you really do need that extra length. You can see here that this is a fairly long hook, especially compared to the standard jig hook, which is quite short. Traditionally, I believe these were tied with something like this, a long shank down eye hook, but I really like having the jig hook for this fly, which you'll see why later in the video. But either of these will work, so feel free to use a long shank nymph hook like this. We will also need some thread, and I'm using Viva's 6/0 in olive. Start the thread right behind the jig bend, and snip or snap off the waist. Now we will make a few wraps building up a thread base around the jig bend. And end with your thread right at the top of the bend. Now we need some Beadchain eyes, and Risen has some really awesome ones available. This one is fluorescent green, but they come in some other colors like this fluorescent red and gold. And they also have silver and fluorescent orange as well. You could use the 2.5mm or 3.2mm size for this hook size today. Okay, let's clip 2 beads off to make the eyes. By the way, make sure you use clippers like this, and definitely not your tying scissors or you will badly damage them. Now I'm going to link below in the description section to some of these. They're a super handy tool for your tying bench and not too expensive. Okay, place the Beadchain eyes on top of the jig bend and tie it in with some X-wraps, trying to ensure that it stays perpendicular to the hook shank and it's not canted to one side or the other. Then we will do some under wraps to tighten up the X-wraps and really lock those eyes in tightly. Okay, let's do another set of X-wraps and under wraps. This is pretty tight now, but to ensure these don't spin, I really like adding the Solarez Ultra Thin. It has a handy paintbrush in the cap for easy application, so just paint a little bit on the wraps around the Beadchain eyes, both top and bottom, and cure it with your UV light. Now this hardens up those thread wraps instantly and ensures that the eyes won't spin, and you don't have to wait for it to dry like super glue. Okay, let's bring the thread down to the hook bend, and then back up to just shy of the eyes. This creates a thread base for the materials to rest on. Next we need some rabbit fur, and for that, rabbit strips will work just fine. Now you could get a rabbit skin, but these strips are easier to find, and today I'm using olive, but they come in a wide range of colors, more than I have here. You could even use Magnum zonkers, which are wider, and therefore you don't need to use up as much of the zonker. Okay, let's separate out about this much of the fur, and I find wetting it helps to keep it together. Now you could cut off the strip, but it's also pretty easy to just rip the fur off as well. Okay, let's measure out about a hook shank length for the tail, and tie this down. Bring your thread all the way back to the bend of the hook. Now cut off the excess fur, but save this as we will use it at a later step in this fly. Now we need some chenille, and today I'm using this medium-sized rayon chenille in olive. Pull off 2 turns of the chenille and clip it off the card. This should tie about 3 to 4 of these flies. Now chenille comes in so many colors and styles, so get creative and try some cool color combos. And this variegated chenille is pretty awesome also, with the checkering of different colors. Whatever chenille you use, let's tie this in with the end almost up to the Beadchain eyes. Then bring your thread up, tying down the chenille as you go. Let's go back down and up once again to smooth things out a bit. And end with your thread about 1/3 of the way down the hook shank, about here. Now we need some rubber legs, and these centipede legs are round rubber legs. They're the same thing as these here, just with some checkering colors. And this one is speckled yellow and a small size. These come in so many cool colors, more than I have here. But whatever color you choose, let's clip 1 strand off the hank and then fold it in half and align the tips. Then tie these in on top of the hook, but you want it slightly longer in the back than the loop. And make sure you do 2 light wraps here. Then clip the loop, which will give you 2 legs now. Let's bring one leg to the side of the hook like this and the other leg to the other side. Now we will tie up slightly over the legs, creating a gap between the forward-facing side and back side. And try to ensure that these legs stay on the side of the hook though, and they don't get moved around with the wraps. Then end with your thread right behind the Beadchain eyes. Now let's start wrapping the chenille up the hook shank, creating a body. When you reach the first set of legs, wrap over them like so, which will force them angling rearward. Then try to wrap over the other set in a way that forces them to stick out sideways, not forward or rearward too much. Then capture the chenille and trim off the waist. Now let's make a few wraps behind the eyes to make a smooth thread collar, which will make hackling this fly a little easier. Okay, now we need some hackle. And I have this really beautiful whiting wet fly hackle. This is a chartreuse dyed grizzly. What you're looking for though in a feather is something webby. And by that I mean fibers that are soft and kind of stick together like this. Let's find a feather where the fibers are half the length of the hook, and this one will work. Prepare the feather for tie-in by stripping off the fuzzy fibers at the base of the feather. And let's make a tie-in spot by grasping the tip and stroking down the fibers behind it. Also, feathers have a curve to them. Make sure you tie this in with the curve angling down. So you don't need special whiting hackle. Cheap soft hackle saddles like these will work. And this hairline soft hackle patch might work also. Basically, if it says wet fly or soft hackle, it most likely will work for this fly. Some might not even say those things. Just check the feather and see if they're soft fibers. Okay, let's tie this in right behind the Beadchain eyes with a couple tight wraps. And then pull back the tag end and tie over it. Now you're going to have some fibers trapped and sticking out, so just trim them off. And don't worry about the head area looking pretty, as we will cover this up soon. Once the feather is tied in, then let's form the hackle collar. Stroke the fibers rearward to help keep them angling back, and make 2 to 3 wraps of the hackle, and then capture it with your thread. Then make a few wraps in front and over it. Now inevitably, you will be trapping some fibers, and they will push up forward past the eye. Let's try to pull them all rearward and wrap over them to help keep them in the collar and not forward. Now we can trim off the feather stem, and trim off any fibers that we couldn't get angling back. Now take that piece of rabbit fur we clipped off earlier, and separate it out in your fingers, and use this as the dubbing, forming a loose noodle on your thread. Then proceed to make a wrap behind the Beadchain eyes, and then also make X wraps over the eyes and under as well, ending with your thread at the hook eye. Now you can whip finish the fly. I have this tool from Dragonfly. It's a handy little brush that allows you to get into tight places. Let's brush out the dubbing head to help transition the head into the collar. Then use a bit more of the Solarez Ultra Thin Resin to cement the whip finish and to make this fly super durable. Now you can leave the legs as long as you wish, but now would be the time to trim the legs if you want to. I like the front legs to be about as long as the collar fibers, and then I cut the rear legs to just shy of the tail end. You can play with the legs a bit and adjust them to your desired position. But there we have it, the finished Carter's rubber leg Dragonfly. Now this fly seems complicated, but it really isn't too difficult. And I can tie about a half dozen or more of them in an hour, making it possible to fill a box in an afternoon. This is a streamer and moves quite nicely in the water when stripped in. However, when tied with some slightly larger Beadchain eyes like I did here and a jig hook, it will rest perfectly hook point up on the bottom. And it seems to almost always land hook point up, as it wants to correct itself. So you can fish this as a streamer or let it sink to the bottom, and when you make little tugs on it, it lifts up the back, which in my experience tends to entice the fish to strike, if they haven't already while it's sinking. Being hook point up also means that when bouncing along the bottom, you're less likely to snag on rocks and debris. Now this fly also will catch more than just sunfish, making it a great all-purpose warm water fly. Now pretty much every fly I've tied so far in the series works for other warm water fish, not just panfish. However, this one especially, I believe, is suited for targeting just about any warm water fish you want. For sure sunfish and other panfish. However, these work extremely well for bass, carp, and even catfish as well. Let me know in the comments section what you think about this fly, and if it's something you plan on tying up. Now you can also get creative and tie these in whatever colors you want. Here are some samples for you. Of course, make them your own, and like I said before, most of the materials come in a wide range of colors, so the color combos are really endless for this fly. Alright, well I'm halfway done filling this month's series box with panfish flies. So far I've tied up the bully bluegill, a great nymph style fly that is one of my top producing sunfish flies. Last week I tied up the very popular and easy to tie foam beetle, which bluegill and other sunfish go crazy for. And of course now this Carter's Dragonfly. Now, next week I will be continuing this series with the panfish gurgler, another easy but super effective topwater fly that some fish and most warm water fish go crazy for. So make sure you're subscribed and click the bell notification so you don't miss any future videos like this gurgler fly. Now, I do sell these waterproof silicone back boxes on Amazon with free shipping, and they have enough room to fit these flies without compressing the materials, yet are thin enough to fit in most shirt pockets. Or you can put multiple in a chest pack, allowing you to organize your boxes by fly type, like this panfish fly box. The silicone back is self-healing as well, so even if you do miss the pre-made slots to hold your flies and poke the silicone, it won't get all beat up like those foam back boxes. I will link to my Amazon storefront below in the description section of this video if you're interested. Also, don't forget to check out my sponsor Risen Fly. They made the hooks I use today, but they also make some of the best fly rods and reels for the money I have ever used. Best off, they're offering you all a discount. So if you're in the market for a new rod or a bunch of hooks or beads, go to www.risenfly.com and type in McFly at checkout and they'll give you 15% off of your first order with them. Okay, well, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please do me a favor and click the like button. Also, share all my videos with your fishing friends. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.